Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video. Want to have a bit of a discussion with you about perception of knives and about people freaking out because of you carrying a knife or because they see that you're carrying a knife. I'd love to hear your best story about that, okay? Go ahead and share that with us in the comments. I could see this being a really entertaining comment section. Now that I've sort of introduced it and I've gotten you guys to give me some feedback, by the way, if you like this kind of thing, go ahead and like and subscribe. Let's get into what I want to talk about, and that is the way people react and how they sometimes react. Now, let me say that there can be a very negative public perception of knives. Now, same is true of guns, but this is a knife channel, so let's stick to knives. I will say I think the perception of guns is changing a little bit. I think people are seeing the value in good people being armed, okay? Now, when it comes to knives, I don't think we need to worry about good people being armed. I think it's more, hey, this is a useful tool that many people should have. And in fact, I go out of my way to encourage everyone I know to carry a knife. And people around me have started carrying knives and even have told me, hey, you know, you kind of beat me up over this, and so I've given in and now I carry a knife all the time. And then I say, well, is it a sharp knife, right? And let's take this one step further. Anyway, there will be people who freak out, and I've had them freak out, and I definitely, the best story I know is not about myself. I have on a couple of occasions had people say, oh, that's a big knife. And then I kind of diffuse the situation. But on one occasion, and I've told this story once before, so if you've been around for a while, you've heard this. A friend went into Tim Hortons with his knife in his pocket, and a lady in line went to the manager and said, hey, there's a guy in here with a knife. Of course, the manager was like, oh no, anyway. Kind of an interesting story, but that shows how people can sometimes react. So I think the first thing, the most important thing about this is perception, because I have proof positive that people don't need to freak out about knives. Everyone has a drawer filled with kitchen knives in their kitchen. Nobody freaks out, right? If you come into your kitchen and your wife is there cutting up steak, you don't go, whoa, my, she's got a huge knife. No, it's no big deal because everyone's used to seeing that kind of a knife around. It's not even an issue, okay? And I think that's the direction we want to go with pocket knives. People need to get to the point where they're like, it's a pocket knife. Most people carry them. It's a good idea to carry one. I should be carrying one myself. And so it kind of loses that negative perception that sometimes, and I will admit only sometimes, people have. All right. Part of it comes from those thug movies from the 80s where, you know, there's always a street thug with a gas station knife and he pulls it out and says, you know, give me all your money. Or especially the switchblade when he pulls it out and pushes the button. Give me all your money right now. Okay. So the switchblade is a whole different discussion. And Balisong, and that's I gotta admit this, guys. Can someone tell me, how did the Balisong get a negative perception? Like, it is the least dangerous of all the folding knives to anybody else except for you. And to you, it's only dangerous to your fingers while you're learning to flip the thing. All right. So I would love to know how it got such the reputation that it has. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well as your stories. So that's perception is what we're dealing with. So I think where you are makes a difference. What city you're in. I think there's a difference in perception between, let's say, Toronto and Calgary if you're in Canada, or New York City and Dallas, Texas, okay, or, you know, whatever, Miami, Florida and Jacksonville, Florida. There's going to be a different perception probably about people carrying knives in different cities, different states, and even different countries, okay? So that's number one, location matters. So be aware of where you are and understand that it might be different. I've never had a real problem. One time I was carrying this knife, the Ultimate Hunter, and I was asked to take it out of my pocket, put it in my wife's purse, as if that somehow makes it no longer a knife, or the edge mysteriously got duller when I put it in her purse. I have no idea. That was when going to the CN Tower on one occasion. So then, the next thing that matters is the look of the knife. And I'm going to say look probably matters even more than size, although size does matter in this case. Actually, size matters in a lot of cases, but that's a discussion for a different video on a different channel. Let's give some examples. I love big knives. Okay, And all of these are in my pocket a lot of the time. They're all pretty large, and pulling out any one of these in a public place could be noticed. Now, I will say when I use these knives in a public place, I'm usually a little bit discreet. I don't go crazy trying to hide it. And above all, I act like it's a normal thing. The other day at McDonald's, we were in there. I happened to have the military on me, and I was going to cut up some nuggets for my one son who's quite young. He needs them still cut up into bite-sized pieces. So I pulled this knife out, cut them into bite-sized pieces as if it was no big thing. And guess what? Nobody made a big thing about it. If I had, pulled the knife out or tried to hide it or anything stupid like that, then it would have been different. Okay. So perception matters. By the way, you can impact perception in a lot of ways, right? Your body language, the way you use it. Not only that, but if let's say you're at work, let's say you're at the park, let's say you're at church, someplace where you go regularly and you're going to know people. If they know you and you're kind and courteous and polite and dress in a way that doesn't look threatening and act in a way that isn't threatening, and you pull out a knife, no one is going to bat an eyelash, okay? And so you have an influence on the way you're perceived, and that is part of the deal here, guys. Whether you like it or not, it is, okay? And even think of your own perspective, right? If you saw 15 people and they were all dressed in different ways, would the way they were dressed influence whether you thought they should have a weapon or whether you'd be comfortable with them having a weapon or not? Probably it would, okay? That's just the reality of human perception. So, what can you do? Well, let's see. You could let people know that you're interested in knives. People that are around me on a regular basis, they know that I'm into knives, and so they expect me to be carrying sometimes multiple knives, large knives, and oftentimes they will rely on that. If you're in the workplace, especially like an office setting where a large knife may not be well perceived, or like a corporate setting, it becomes all the more important. Let people know, hey, I'm into knives. I've got a collection. I'm good at sharpening. If you sharpen the knives for people around you, encourage them to carry knives. Hey, that's going to make a difference, right? And so they learn like you to see it as a useful tool, and then it becomes no big deal. Right? Where if you kind of keep it a secret and then all of a sudden, to cut open your whatever, box of craft dinner that you're cooking for lunch that day, you pull out a Raja 2 and chop the top off, and people are like, whoa, what's going on? But if people know you carry a knife and you're kind of an enthusiast or a collector or even a YouTuber, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, he's got knives, I know that, it's no big deal, right? So in places where you frequent, you can have an influence on the way a knife is perceived. Now, I think the kind of knife, okay, a knife like this where it's a little bigger is probably going to be noticed more. Satin finish, I don't know, guys. What do you think? Black blade or satin blade more threatening? I honestly don't know. Maybe the black blade is less noticeable, okay? Now, I will say a clip point blade, people are going to perceive that as being a little more aggressive because in every horror movie you've ever seen, the bad guy always has a Bowie-style knife with a clip point blade. There are knives, though, if you're really concerned about this, that I think you could carry pretty easily. Something like the Jettison from CRKT, right? It does not have a very threatening look. In fact, it's a kind of a different looking knife that may even get people asking questions. Here's a great example of this kind of thing. The Roach from Kaiser. This knife is so different and so interesting that I've had people, when I'm carrying it, actually say, can I see it? Can I hold it? Like, that is such a cool looking knife. And so a knife like this, even though it's pretty big, you can get away with using this in a lot of places without anyone caring. And in fact, this is a way that you can often break the ice and transition people who are maybe uncomfortable with knives to being more open-minded about it because they go, yeah, that is a cool knife, right? Spyderco Domino is a good example of a very good quality, functional knife that will do most of your cutting tasks. I will say my big complaint about this is it's a little small, but you're rarely going to find anyone who's threatened to buy a knife like this, okay? Most people, even if you flip it open, they are not going to care. They're going to be like, yeah, cool knife, you know? Not a threatening knife at all, even though it does have that satin finish. Now, the Lawman, I think, is a great knife, and generally speaking, not terribly like aggressive or tactical looking, even though it's called the Lawman. And I think you could probably use this in most situations. Although, again, we're back to the, you know, this one kind of has that tactical look to it. I like the olive drab, and I do carry this knife a lot. But I could see, because it looks militaristic, someone noticing it and asking questions. A knife that's really, really good along these lines is the Ultimate Hunter. Okay, this knife is extremely functional. I mean, it's fairly large, it's got a fairly decent blade size, it's extremely comfortable. Any cutting task that you need to get done, you're going to be able to do it pretty well with this. But it's not threatening at all. At least my perception is that it's, you know, it is not a knife that's going to upset too many people. What else have I got for you? Oh yeah, the Carter Prime, and this kind of stands for, like the others that I've shown you, knives that look a little different, probably aren't going to be that upsetting to people. You know, this doesn't have a pointy tip. Okay, it just looks like sort of a useful cutting tool, and it even has that sort of utility knife kind of feel to it. So again, people are going to be like, yeah, no big deal. It's just a cutting tool. So if that's a concern for you, there are options that are out there. Let me add one more thing to this before we close things down. A fixed blade, generally speaking, even a small one like this, is going to be perceived differently than a folder, just because people don't think pocket knife fixed blade. They don't make that connection. Now, a lot of places, you know, I carry a fixed blade quite frequently. I've never had an issue with it. Although I live in a small town and we're kind of a rural, like farming, outdoorsy community, and that probably has an impact on that. So, you know, there are a number of different things. The color, the shape, the size, the overall design, how aggressive does it look? And I know that can be a hard thing to pin down, but something like the Cold Steel Talwar or the Riat Valkyrie, which I love both those knives, but they probably look a little more aggressive, although my Talwar's blue, which kind of takes it down a notch. So there you go, guys. That's my thoughts on people being scared of knives. And I think the reality is it's largely perception. And if you take steps to change people's perception, it's not that hard to do, especially if they know you. And then you can get away with a lot. So if you're a knife collector, an enthusiast, and you want to be able to use your knives and carry your knives, take steps to help the people around you to see knives in a different way, and it'll be more fun for you because you'll get more use out of your knives and you'll feel more comfortable using them in lots of different settings. All right, so there you go. Hope you enjoyed the video. I would love to hear your stories. I'm actually kind of looking forward to the stuff that you guys will be able to share with me in the comments here. Talk to you soon.